For years, I made decluttering way harder than it needed to be. Just the thought of dealing with and getting rid of my stuff made me feel so overwhelmed. But one day, when I finally got over my foolishness and decided to tackle it, and I was in the process of going through these things, I realized that it was never about my stuff. It was about the way I was thinking. And once I made this one mindset shift, decluttering actually became easy. That one shift changed not just how I see my home, but really my whole life. I was finally able to declutter my whole life when I stopped seeing decluttering as just getting rid of my stuff and started seeing it as making room for the best. And I'm going to talk all about that. But first, it's really important to understand why decluttering can feel so hard because let's be real, a lot of times it can feel heavy. But here's the thing, generally, it's not the act of decluttering that's hard. It's what we make it mean. Yes, there can be a lot of stuff, but there's also oftentimes a lot of emotion that's tied to it. The stuff that we collect and that we hold on to nearly always has a story that's attached to those things. And so we approach decluttering from a place of fear, fear of lack, fear of waste, fear of being unprepared. And then we tell ourselves things like, oh, I don't have time. I might need this later. I spent money on this. What if I regret it? And in our heads, decluttering starts to feel like a breakup or a funeral or punishment for past decisions that we made instead of the freeing process that it's supposed to be. Going through, reevaluating, and getting rid of the things that no longer serve us is actually an investment into our future and our peace. And it became so clear to me that I could not move forward freely if every corner of my life was holding on to some version of the past. And so that's where the mindset ended up coming in for me. I stopped decluttering for the sole purpose of I just need to get rid of things and started decluttering from this place of I need to make room for the life that I want. For so long, decluttering felt like this massive, overwhelming process that I really just did not want to do because I was scared of letting go. I was scared of making the wrong decision or of letting go of the past, and it made me not even want to try. If you know my story, if you've heard me say this before, I had all of this stuff, all of this crap that was sitting in these bins that never looked messy. You would never know there was all that stuff hiding behind it, but it was also stuff that I knew I needed to deal with, but I just didn't want to, and so I didn't. We're tackling these living room bins. Honestly, they're all over the house filled with unknown treasures because don't judge. Sometimes it's much easier for me to hide things away than to deal with them. When I did, it was like, why have I been chugging this stuff along from space to space to space, year after year after year, not willing to deal with it? When you approach decluttering from that fear, scarcity, or guilt, all you see is what you're losing. You see every item as security and every drawer of stuff that you might need just in case. You start living with one foot in the past, constantly preparing for the worst instead of creating space for the best. And that's what I was doing for years. I did not realize that by not going through this stuff, by not allowing myself to let it go, I was reinforcing that same scarcity that had me feeling stuck in the first place. But when I started decluttering from faith instead of from fear, everything changed. Faith shifts your focus. It says, I'm not losing, I'm making room. If I need it later, God will provide it. If it is meant for me, then it'll find its way back if I need it. So as I was going through the process, I slowly learned to stop asking, what if I need this someday? And started saying, if I need it, I'm gonna have what I need. And the thing is, the moment that I started decluttering from faith and from expectation, I realized that I was building this life that looked like what I had been wanting all along, but that I had been delaying because I was too afraid to let things go. And it makes sense because, like I was saying, decluttering isn't really about the stuff. It's about self-trust. It is about believing that you can release what is no longer serving you and still be okay. In fact, be even better than okay. When you let go from faith, it is like putting this stake in the ground that says, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready for what's next. I am ready to live in alignment. I'm ready to receive more than I have ever had because now there is finally room for it. And when I say more, I'm not necessarily talking about more stuff, but more space, more peace, more clarity, more just energy and ability to be able to function and thrive. And then all of the after effects really just blew my mind because there were things that happened that I didn't really expect going into it. First, like I mentioned, the whole process got easier. When I stopped decluttering from a place of guilt and pressure and putting all of this stress on myself, I didn't dread it anymore. I wasn't making these huge all or nothing projects out of everything, but I was building in these small little resets into my everyday life. And with that, it stopped being about cleaning up chaos and started being about just maintaining peace. One thing here, a few minutes there, and it became this lifestyle of just assessing and letting go of what no longer just served any purpose in my life or where it was that I was going. When I stopped making it an overwhelming process, it became so much easier to be consistent. Also, I stopped feeling guilty about letting go. There was a time when letting go felt like a failure or like I was being wasteful or careless. But through the process, through starting it and changing my mindset about it, I realized that letting go was an act of self love. I was releasing what had already served its purpose. Those things, they taught me lessons about myself. They gave me what I needed at different seasons of my life. And now it's time to let them go. Even the money that I had spent on quote unquote mistakes or things that I shouldn't have bought or never used, it wasn't wasted. It was actually tuition for clarity. When I started seeing it that way, I could finally let go without guilt. There was so much peace about being able to let go of all of this random stuff that I didn't need, want, or use anyway. Also, I began expecting better in every area of my life. The more I decluttered, the more I just made room for better, the higher my standards became. I realized that clutter was in many ways a reflection of all the crap that I had been willing to tolerate. If I was tucking away and holding on to things in one area, then I was likely doing it in other areas as well, in my time, in my routines, and my relationships. So I raised my standards. I stopped apologizing for wanting peace and structure and softness and beauty in my life. My environment stopped reflecting me being overwhelmed and indecisive and started reflecting the fact that I had grown. When you start expecting better, life starts to rise to meet that expectation. And because my space now aligned with my next level, it was so much easier to now start living from that and stop just dreaming about it, stop wanting it, stop wishing, stop hoping from it, but actually living in it. And that's the ripple effect that happens with decluttering. It's not just your space that gets lighter, it's you. So, how can you apply this mindset shift to your own life? First off, reframe the focus. You have to recognize that the purpose of decluttering is not just to become a minimalist. Minimalism is cool and all, but the goal is to clear space for who you're becoming. That simple shift will completely change how you go into it. Our minds are incredibly powerful. And when you start to see decluttering as an act of becoming instead of as a chore, then it turns from something that you have to do into something that you get to do. And we all like doing things that we get to do. And so as you are reframing it, I want you to ask yourself, what version of me lives here? Does the environment, does the stuff that you're holding on to, does it match the woman that you're becoming? Or is it a reflection of someone that you have outgrown or that you are working to outgrow? Every drawer, surface, habit, relationship tells a story. If the story being told does not fit the narrative of your future self, it's time to think about releasing it. You cannot prepare space for the future while holding on to stuff that crowds your space and weighs you down. Two, ask better questions. The questions that you ask are going to determine the quality of your results. Instead of asking, should I keep this, which is going to keep you stuck in indecision, ask questions that actually push you to think deeper and more critically. How does this support the woman that I'm becoming? Would the next level version of me choose to carry this forward? When you ask better questions, you actually make decisions from clarity instead of from fear or from guilt. And then decluttering becomes an act of confidence instead of confusion. And so what happens is instead of managing stuff, you are now managing your standards. Three, practice privilege. If you haven't seen any of my living in privilege videos and you have no clue what I'm talking about, I will link them down below. I would suggest you check them out. But declutter like a woman who knows that there's just more where that came from. Privilege, true privilege, isn't about excess. It's about trust. Privileged women, they don't hoard, they curate. They make space intentionally and on purpose because they know that God, life, and opportunities will refill that space with something better, something more aligned. It is not about having and hoarding everything, but about being able to enjoy and use what it is that you have and trusting that as you need more, it will become available. And that's what makes decluttering feel light instead of painful. You release this fear, this need to hold on so tightly to things, and allow yourself to step into the flow of abundance. When you declutter from that space, you are no longer fighting with yourself or your stuff. You're aligning everything about you, your space, your mind, your life, with what's next. So that is the mindset shift that made decluttering actually so easy for me. I stopped seeing it as a chore and as just me getting rid of my stuff and started seeing it as a declaration that I was done being overwhelmed. I was done feeling guilty. I was done having all of this crap that didn't align with my life. But it was also a declaration and also recognizing that I deserve peace and space for what's next. And if you shift to that mindset, I promise you, everything will become so much easier for you too when you're decluttering. Alrighty, my friends, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and share it with somebody else who needs to hear it too. Also, if you're not subscribed, like, what are you doing? I'm gonna need you to jump on that. Thank you so much for being here. I love you so, so much, and I will see you in my next. Bye for now.